What does it mean when you are literally looking at your valley and you're trying to figure out whether all of the things that you've gone through, all of the things that you experience has any meaning or has any say so in terms of what your future will look like? Well, in today's live stream, we're going to be covering day 5 as we get into our conversations of reading through The Dream Chaser by Mr. Tony Gaskins. And with this conversation, we're really going to be looking at how we can identify the experiences of our valley and indicating whether or not it could truly help us to identify our gift. So if you're ready, let's go. The Debt Demolisher TV with Sophia Melone. Make sure the mute is on. Hello, 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 everyone. I am Sophia Melonē, the Debt Demolisher, here to bring you the tools, tips, and tricks to help you manage your financial baggage the right way. What an honor and privilege it is to be before you all for yet another live stream morning on the Debt Demolisher TV as we cover day 5 of The Dream Chaser. I know that there has been quite a little bit of a switcheroo in terms of our conversation, but I want to make sure that we are able to be caught up and we are able to stay in alignment with what we plan to cover each day as we read through The Dream Chaser by Mr. Tony Gaskins. If you have not picked up the book, make sure that you pick up the book. All of the links in the descriptions are inside of the box of this video, so that way you can reach Tony Gaskins' website, his YouTube page, his social media handles, and make sure that you get your copy of the Dream Chaser book so that you can join us inside of our daily conversations. One of the things that we're doing, we're going to be covering day 5 of our readings, which is essentially around finding the meaning and finding the core lessons from your valley experience, so that way we can see how they could actually identify and uncover our gifts. It's imperative that we recognize that the things that we go through in life is essentially positioned to allow us to be greater in one way, shape, or form, even though we may feel like it's not the thing that we want to go through, or we may feel like it's such a heavy burden to us. So for day 5, we were supposed to read pages 39 through 48 of the book. And so that will allow us to close out chapter 4 around the valley experience and begin the chapter 5 of using your gifts. So I want to thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you again. Once again, Akila is in the room. Akila is in the room. I said, Akila is in the room. I said, Akila is in the room. No, I can't sing like her, but I'm going to try to blow these tunes like her. So glad that you're in the room, Keela. Thank you so much for letting me know about the audio issues. Sherry is also here this morning. Says, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Sherry. So good to see you. Welcome, welcome, welcome on into this room. I am so glad that you are here. Hey, so let's go, Sherry. Let's go, Sherry. Let's go, Sherry. Let's go, let's go, let's go, Sherry. Let's go, Sherry. It's the income, Sherry. Let's go, Sherry. Hey, Sherry's in the room. So glad that you guys are here. But we're going to go ahead and get into our conversation because I really want to speak through these items and what we covered, because there was so much that was packed inside of the remainder of chapter 4, and then of course opening up in chapter 5. But there was one thing that really stuck out for me as we continue to read through page 39. One of the things that Tony was talking about was related to his valley experience and how he wanted to portray a certain lifestyle, but he really wasn't ready to put in that level of work that was required. We read the story about him talking about how he worked in the warehouse and he changed from working at the front end of the grocery store to the back end of the grocery store because he was embarrassed by people seeing him stock shelves. And so he said, well, I want to be behind the scenes. Let me move to the warehouse so that way people can't really see what I'm doing and I'm still able to make an honest living, but not realizing how much more level of effort was required inside of that space of working in the warehouse, shifting pallets, moving things around. It was such an amazing visual, at least that I was able to pick up as a result of reading his story through that. But he was talking about how he wasn't ready for a man's work, like what you have to do when you accept your birth path that's given to you. He says, I wasn't ready for man's work that you have to do when your consequences come home to nest. How many of us want a particular thing, but we're not willing to put in the work that's necessary for that particular thing? Amen. There are so many times where we feel extremely exhausted about a certain thing. We want a certain position, we want a certain title, we want a certain role, but we don't recognize what that role essentially entails. We don't understand what it takes to fulfill that role at 120%, as he was mentioning inside of our readings, whereby when depending on the role that you have is going to require more of you, and you can't be pulling anything less than 100%, or you're not going to be able to perform effectively. So I appreciate him talking about that side, and then also talking about how God will send the blessing and the way of escape, but the devil will send the trap. On a recent morning, I think it was one of my shorts. I do my morning inspiration shorts. And one of the shorts was about that very same thing. It's like an image of a domino and the dominoes falling on one another. And I think I wrote inside of the caption of that video, or on the face of that video, that that the enemy will always present something to take you out of character, or to get you off track, or to distract you for whatever reason. And our job is not to fall for that trap. So when I read this piece in the book, I was thinking of that same very thing, of how the Lord will give you a way of an escape, but the enemy will give you that trap, because the enemy does not want to see you succeed. The enemy does not want to see you propel. The enemy does not want to see you live your best ordained, God-fearing, God-blessing life. Tony Gaskin says at the bottom of page 41 that there was sacrifice that had to be made. There was budgeting that had to be in place. You still had to prioritize and live an adult life. The reason why I highlighted this piece was because budgeting is primary in everything that we do. Not just budgeting your finances, but you have to budget your time. You have to budget your schedules. You have to budget your energy. You have to decide what you are going to focus your energy on and what you are not. There's some things that you may not be able to control. There's some things that just happen just because. And if it happens, we kind of have to adjust our ways to see how we can navigate through it. But in some cases, there's nothing that we can do. There's nothing that we can do. But in most cases, we have a responsibility to budget and manage every single aspect of our lives, not just the money. I highlighted this piece on page 42 when Tony Gaskins was talking about how he was a product of his environment. I mentioned this in the recent live stream that we were talking about, in terms of how we emulate what we see growing up in our household, how the things that are in front of us is the thing that we try to strive after, what we try to yearn after, because that's all we see, because our minds are so impressionable. But one of the things that has come up inside of not only this chapter, but the chapter that we're going to be reading for day 6, is really looking at the aspect around, sometimes we have to think bigger and grander beyond what we've been able to see in the physical because of what's in our environment. We have to always believe that there is something far greater than where we are. There is something far greater than what we're able to see today. And oftentimes we could limit ourselves because of, we feel like what we've been able to see someone else do or see someone else experience, that now has to become our ceiling. When in fact, that's not our ceiling. There's something far greater than the level that that person who you're watching has obtained. So he says that he was living what he'd seen over and over. How many of us are living over what we see over and over? He says that there were so many talented individuals from where he was from, and they could have done so much in the world, but they came back to do not so good things inside of the world. infesting the community and downturning the community out of the sense of them wanting to be able to get quick and fast money. He says that you were one or the other. There weren't many of us who were neither. There were a few guys who Tony Gaskins said that he knew who chose to be overworked and underpaid, like his parents. This is a powerful thing because when you think about the aspect of being overworked and underpaid, that may be many of our stories, but even in that, it's building something in us to want to be able to do better. But I think the point that Tony is trying to make is even in that being overworked and underpaid, there is still something far greater than that. And so it's just a matter of not being stuck inside of whatever that system is. One thing that I thought was powerful was at the bottom of page 43, where Tony began to talk about his wife. He began to talk about Cherie Gaskins, Mrs. Cherie Gaskins. He began to talk about her before she was even his wife. He said that he think that God gave her clearance to come down the valley and help him up. He says, I think God knew that neither my parents nor my friends could help. He had to send my woman. So Tony Gaskins realized that Cherie Gaskins was on a whole nother level and that she was far more ambitious than him. She was far smarter than him academically. She was more influential than him. And in all honesty, he said that he distracted her from the very thing that she was striving from. She wanted to be a doctor. She had the brains and the mind to be a doctor. She studied biomedical science. And he talked about how he didn't understand why God would give him such a blessing as much as Cherie Gaskins, but he truly believed that the Lord gave Cherie clearance to come down and be his helpmate, to come down and be the person to push him to the greatest version of himself. And even when I was reading that piece, I thought it was so powerful because he talked about how she spoke life into him. Tony Gaskins said that she spoke life into me. She told me I was better. She told me I was better than the man I'd become. She told me I was gifted in that I had a bigger purpose in life. She told me I was smart and that I could become anything I wanted to become. Deep down, I knew she was right. I knew I could be more. He said that I had shown him, he said that he had shown himself some things while he was in the streets. He said, I got a product for free. I got knowledge for free. I made money from it. I packaged it. I marketed it. And then I sold it. And I manifested the demand. And then I supplied it. I had shown myself that I knew how to be an entrepreneur and a businessman. I just needed to go about it the right way. I needed a purpose. I needed a meaning for life. I needed my wife. How powerful is that? How powerful is that for Tony to recognize that the thing that he was already skilled in doing, even though it was the wrong way, was something that he could turn around and do the right way, as long as he had the backing and the support and the words of affirmation, the belief of the woman who is his backbone, who he knew was his backbone, who he knew was going to be the person who he would cherish and spend the rest of his life with at some point. And this takes me to the quote of the day. Quote of the day was this. He says, I was in the valley and God sent an angel, and I added my wife because that's who he's talking about, to whisper life into me. I started to get some strength to climb again. I started looking at my life and getting lessons from it. He continues on by saying, I knew I had to clean up my act, and the mistakes I made took a total of about 6 to 8 months. So it took him 6 to 8 months to clean up the act of his mistakes. How powerful was that? He said that he got so much support from not only his girlfriend back then, but now wife. And he even talked about the support that he received from his parents, his mom bailing him out to help him get caught up on rent, his wife helping him out by using some of her student loans to support him, or student loan refunds to support him and get caught up on things, or him using her student loan refunds to move to a different apartment. And this takes me to the exercise that I've identified at the bottom of page 45, where he talks about him wanting us to spend some time to really think about our valley experience. So at the bottom of page 45, the very last paragraph is an exercise that I want you to think about at some point. It doesn't have to be now. It could be sometime this weekend. It could be sometime throughout this month. But really think about your valley. He wants us to think about our valley and think about what it showed us. Think about the lessons that we were able to gain as a result of that. Think about whether or not that particular valley has made us stronger. And what about that valley that we were able to get through is something that we can still begin to practice and do even now, even in our moments where we may not still be in the valley. He talked about, how did the valley make us wiser? Are we ashamed of any of our low points? I'll be honest, when I feel like in my valley piece, I was ashamed to say a lot of the things. I mean, of course, it felt shameful in the moment because I was just like, I cannot believe that this has happened. I cannot believe that this was done to me. I cannot believe, like, how degrading is this? But even in that moment, here and there, those moments came out on this very channel. Sometimes whatever I feel like the Lord is leading me to do and say and share, whatever comes up is intended to come up. So I don't have any doubts or any fears or any shames around it, because it's designed to bless whoever it was that heard it. So whether or not, if you picked up the story or not, then it wasn't meant for you to hear. But think about the shame. And if you feel any shame in that, and how you can no longer be ashamed if there was any. He says, don't think that you have to tell every detail of your story. He says that turn your mess into your message. He says, use that pain to propel you into a season of greatness. Let those lessons make you wiser. Don't stop learning from them. If you made it out, don't go back on purpose. If you happen to be knocked down again, don't stay down. Get up and keep fighting. We all have valleys, experiences, but it's how you use them that will determine your success. So how can you use this exercise to begin to think about your valley and identify the meaning inside of your valley and how it ties to your gift? Now, as we begin to open up in chapter 5, a part of our reading was to read the first 2 pages of chapter 5 around using your gifts. And in that, this is really going to help us tie in to help expose what we believe our gift is. Some of us may already know. Some of us may still be in a state of exploring. Some of us may still need confirmation as to what our gift is. But one of the things that was so powerful inside of the beginning of chapter 5, I'm reading on page 48, where he talked about, we look at the people who make millions from their gift, and then we see others just as gifted who are poor and barely getting by. He says that Beyonce is amazing, but she's not the only person who can sing and dance. She's the only one who daringly and boldly uses her gifts without letting fear hinder her. When I read that part, I had to write in the margins of this book the reminder to use your gifts without fear, even if you don't know them yet, even if you're unsure. The moment you find out what your gift is, I want to challenge you to use your gift without fear, without no reservation, without no hindrances, without no second guessing. Be bold, be brilliant, be audacious in that thing, because nobody has the gift in the same capacity that you have it. And if you don't use your gift, you're going to lose it. So one of the things that he says is that we all have gifts, but we have to be bold enough to use them. On page 48, he continues on by saying that there weren't both, they weren't for those who had their gifts, or they go through this phase of thinking that whatever they're supposed to do, whatever it is that they want to do, they feel like they shouldn't do or they can't do because it's not popular. He begins to say that they weren't bold enough to take a chance on their natural gifts, so they'll try to convince you to play it safe. And this is for people who's trying to give us advice around doing or not doing the very thing that we may be passionate or gifted in doing. So he says that they fail to mention that you can work all your life and then be laid off by your safe job and your degree that you've earned. They fail to tell you that Social Security may fail us one day. He says that you'll only have what's in your bank account and you're safe at home to live off of once that happens. He said they won't mention the risk of mediocrity or the risk of not taking any risk. Ooh, there is a risk in not taking any risk. So how many of us have been trying to play it safe? How many of us have been trying to coast? How many of us have been trying to just identify the thing that we know that we can do because it's secure, quote unquote, when really ain't nothing secure. Okay, ain't nothing secure. But basically he's saying that we never question the very thing that people are trying to say to us, and we don't think of it from our own perspectives. We don't think of it from our own lives. We don't think of it from our own gifts and talents and spaces. So he says to close out that failure is becoming non-existent for those who believe, and it's a world built for faith walkers. So what I've learned when it comes to exercising your gift is that we have to do it in a way where faith is going to be at the forefront. We have to live and walk in our faith. One of the things that I mentioned at the beginning of the year is that my word for 2022 was faith. I was very clear on that because of the year that I came out of in 2021. And I knew I needed to build my faith muscle like no other. And just to see this word come back up for me time and time again, it's reminding me that whatever I'm going to face, whatever I'm going through, whatever I'm going to endure in life, whatever path I'm trying to take, is going to require my faith to be as strong as ever. It's going to require me to be a faith walker. So more than likely, whatever it is that you have in terms of a desire, whatever it is that you have in terms of the difference that you want to make, or the usefulness that you want to be able to get out of your life while you have your life, is going to require you to have a certain level of faith. It's going to require you to have a certain level of boldness. It's going to require you to have a certain level of diligence and practice and push through and wherewithal. Because even with that, things will come up, and we're going to need our faith to get us through that. We're going to need our faith to get us through that. So I want to share what the reading assignment is going to be for day 6. Day 6, we're going to be reading pages 49 all the way through 48. And this is going to allow us to finish out chapter 5 of the book, Use Your Gifts. So get ready for a powerful conversation, and be sure to come back and tune in for our next conversation. Remember that we have a dedicated playlist to this book, The Dream Chaser. So we have a playlist that's on the Debt Demolisher TV's channel called Build Up, and you should see it scrolling along the bottom of the screen right now. Build Up, getting to the core purpose and your core dream with Tony Gaskins for Black Business Month, as we read The Dream Chaser. So if you have not picked up your copies of The Dream Chaser, please ensure that you do so. You still have a lot of time to catch up, because we're still at the beginning of the book. And we will use tomorrow to cover the remainder of chapter 5. So make sure that you look out for the community post that's going to go out 9 a.m. in the mornings to let you know what the quote of the day was and what the reading assignment is. And then we'll reconvene for our continued conversation. So you guys, I want to remind you that Your financial prosperity awaits you, and so does your financial sanity. You already know what I'm going to tell you to do, and that's what? Get to work. All right. Bye, guys. The Debt Demolisher TV with Sophia Melone. The Debt Demolisher TV with Sophia